Welcome everyone. So I'm very, very excited to talk about this topic. It's a topic I've been researching for a very long time. When I was a kid, I was starting to code and I said, I need a computer that can code for me. Now I have it. 25 years later, or a little bit more. So I'm very happy to present this topic, which is about shielding emerging grounded theories in the age of generative AI. So my name is Mourmant. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit later. And I'd love to go to the next slide. Yes, here we go. I also want to say un grand merci, a big thank you to Professor Glaser and Strauss. They are the founder of Classic Grounded Theory. They are the one who created the theory, and then it created this huge, massive movement of research around that. To my PhD advisor, Professor Kalika and Professor Gallivan from Paris Dauphine at that moment, and now DBA and also DBA BSc, BSI, and Professor Gallivan was at Georgia State University. And also to my co-author, so I wrote a book with Professor Walsh and Professor Holton on classic grounded theory. And so a lot of what I'm going to talk is coming from that book and also kind of an extension of it. And thank you, Frederic, as well, for organizing this seminar. It's a great opportunity. Just a little bit about my background. So I was a database marketing analyst for a large financial institution. I also an Excel MVP expert, so Microsoft Excel, Power BI, Power Query, and DAX. I mentioned that because I'm using a lot all those generative AI tools as a way to help me code in VBA, to code in Power Query, and so forth. So I can see very quickly when the AI is hallucinating, and it's part of the foundation of this work that I'm presenting as well. I use Straussian grounded theory for my PhD. Then I followed the seminar with Glaser, realized that I lost 1 year by using this type of approach, and then I switched to classic or Glaserian grounded theory. The reason is the Straussian approach is very structured with some kind of template-like research, while Glaser is much more about a sort of free flow in the conceptualization, but using very structured tool and approach. Very structured tools and approach. Since then, I didn't stop doing classic grounded theory. Many different papers. I got an outstanding conference paper award in 2012. Published a book, Conducting Classic Grounded Theory. We transformed the book into an online seminar as well. And I also have been working closely with different people doing their thesis using classic grounded theory. So the talk that I'm going to give is part of a talk and kind of a synthesis of different talks I have been given in different research conferences. So this kind of a synthesis of this. We're first going to look at the general process of classic grounded theory. And during this question, this section, I would like to ask yourself, okay, what type of shield should I use here to protect my work from the generative AI that is coming? What am I trying to protect? And also what will be the impact of generative AI on my work? And so it's kind of having those questions in mind when I'm going to go through the process of classic grounded theory. Then I'm going to talk about the emerging theory of shielding. That's a theory that emerged when I was doing a work on Glaser's work. So I basically use Glaser grounded theory to do a grounded theory of one of his books. Why not? All his data. And then I come up with the theory of shielding, which I think is a very interesting take on what Glaser is trying to do. And then how do you apply shielding to generative AI? And I find that it was fascinating because it was applying very, very well. And finally, the classic limitation discussion conclusion. The shield number 0, as always, read all Glaser's book. They are absolutely fantastic. You read those books and you're like, whoa. Every time I'm reading them, I was like, I'm learning something new. And I've been practicing it for 20 years. So that reason why this guy is so cited. I think it's over 100,000 citation for the seminal work. 100,000. Okay, this is from a talk that Glaser gave at Stanford University on how to do a dissertation in 6 to 8 months. And I'm going to explain, and I was not aware of that when we created this way of looking at it. So we're going to discuss this process. So this process was created when I was working with Isabel and Judith. It came from one of the papers we published, and then we kind of abstracted it, following guidance from Glazer's book, and Glazer himself, because Judith was in contact with him at this point. So the very first thing you want to do is to enter the field, start the data collection, and you want to look at what is the main concern of the interviewees, not your main concern, the main concern of your interviewees. And to arrive to this, you're going to use a tool which is called open coding. So you collect the data, you open code, you code everything, every word, every sentence, every paragraph, you're coding for incident. So the significant piece of data that you want to name. Coding is just simply naming. So you're naming those incidents. You use sorting to, once you got 200 codes, it's too much, so you need to sort them. Sorting is a very, very powerful tool. I use it all the time. It's a way to reorganize all your code together, sorting them into different categories. And as you sort them, the goal of this first step is to find what is the main concern of those interviewees. It could be data coming from other places. So when I was doing the coding of Glazer's book, I was wondering what is the main concern in this book. Additional data collection, what is the core categories that solve the main concern? And this is the second step. So once you find the main concern, it gets saturated. So as you do more and more interviews, it's always the same concern that is coming up. And then people are going to talk about how they are resolving it. And the way they resolve this main concern can be same thing sorted. And as you sort the code that you find resolving this main concern, you're going to see the emergence of one, maybe two core category. And those core categories are the main categories, the main concept that is going to resolve that. Sorry, the main category or concept that is going to resolve the main concern. So basically, at this stage, you already have something very solid where you have a main concern from the interviewee, which is resolved by the core category or the core central concept. And already here you've got the beginning of a very strong theory because it's grounded in data and you saturated this theory. The step number 3 is about selective coding, and the goal is to identify the categories and concepts related to the core category. So you've got your main concern that is resolved by the main or the core category. That core category now needs to be explored furthermore. As you code the different elements around this core category, you also collect more data, you write more memos, and then through this process, you're kind of bringing some meat to the skeleton of your core variable. So this is why you bring the meat to it, different pieces of information of your category. And this will give you the different components and variable of your theory. Now, step number 4, it's going to be about theoretical coding. So how do you relate the core category to the different concepts? And how do you relate the concept one to another? Example of what we call a theoretical code, which could be explained as a relationship between categories and concepts. It could be a typology, it could be causality, it could be an ascending spiral, depending on what you find in your data. So as you code your data for finding the relationship that exists between the core category and the different concept, between the core category and the main concern, sometimes there's something very interesting there as well. How does it resolve? That could be also part of theoretical coding. The end of theoretical coding will be a rough outline of the theoretical model. So you're almost at the draft of it. The draft will be the next step where you're going to take all the piles of memo that you sorted, and pile by pile, you can write kind of a synthesis of those memos, which will give you, as you stay on an abstract level, the first draft of your theory. The first draft of your theory is basically the written explanation at an abstract level of your theory. You can quote some of the data, but they really come as an illustration. The strength of the concept reside in the naming of the concept. You just tell the name and then people got a visual of it. Hopefully shielding is a good core category because you can immediately see a shield, and shielding your theory from generative AI, you can see in your mind a shield is the generative AI trying to attack your theory. And then, so that concept, I hope, has some imagery, probably some grab as well. You may remember that image, hopefully. Step number 6, this is where you come back to the literature. So you've got something very solid, and then now you want to see how this very solid theory will compare to the literature. Probably someone found some similar result that you're going to compare. Someone finds something that will contradict, or maybe someone didn't find anything about what you found. So confirmation, you find something similar as someone else. This is already a scientific result. I believe we should have more confirmation than just new theories, because confirming a theory is as important as creating a new theory. Contradiction, there are some concepts that were not there, or some concepts that were there but didn't fit in my data, and then why. So you've got interesting discussion. And contribution, I'm creating a new concept. This is a new concept there. The enrichment, modification, and integration of your theory in the literature will be the result of step 6, where you're able to say, my theory is part of this field, part of this literature, and within this literature fits there, and there. Finally, you can write the entire draft of your theory. That's probably very close to defending your thesis at this stage. And what is the global picture of your theory? So this is a very clear set of procedure for generating conceptual hypotheses about how people resolve a main concern. So that's really what the grounded theory is, the essence of it, at least the way I understand it from a Glaserian perspective. So I'm a little bit late on my own schedule, so I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So GT can also be seen as a general research framework and also as a set of tools. So it's a very, very rich method in itself. There are tools like sorting, coding, memoing, and so forth. Other aspects that are interesting with generative AI. Maybe finding post-theory generation. Can I find verbatim in a text for an illustration of the existing theory that emerged from my data? Can I ask an AI to do some constant comparative analysis of two texts that are already analyzed to see if they find something new? Can I use the AI to do a theoretical sampling so that they will give me ideas of people I should interview later on? If I struggle with naming a pattern, can I ask the AI to name it for me, or is it super dangerous? Which I believe it is. But once I found the concept that fit, that has grab, that has imagery, that I talk with my director, advisors, and other colleagues, and they all say it's a great idea, can I ask the AI to look at it and tell me if they find something else which will be better? And memoing, can the AI write memo about my data, and then will it look at the data in a different way than me? And because I'm an expert in my data, will it contradict what I'm thinking or not? The emerging theory of shielding. So what are the sources of preconception and also types of shields? So there's a few things I want to talk about. So the main concern that that emerged from that specific grounded theory that emerged from analyzing one of the book was growing a grounded theory free of preconception and full of the joy of autonomous discovery. And really what was very important in the book from Glaser is to freeing people from preconception. Those coming over and over and over and over again. And preconception are really the threat to the emerging grounded theory. At the same time, one way to do it will be to use the joyfulness that is present in any research. When you do a grounded theory, you should be full of joy because you're in the process of discovering something. Your brain is constantly coding, constantly analyzing, comparing. And so it's like creating a lot of really good chemicals in your brain. So this is something that really emerged from the coding. I was surprised by the joyful aspect of it. another example of joyfulness in it. So those are illustrations of joyfulness that was found. And even during the conference where I was presenting one of the papers, someone said, yeah, Glazer was like a little kid excited as he found Mitchell's core variable. So it's like playing a game in many ways. So if you play the game of ground history, it's very, very rewarding. Now, when you play this game, you have to be aware of potential issues, and this is what we're going to discuss now. So there are some threats that could exist. So this is a long schema. I'm just going to look at it very quickly because we don't have that much time. But basically, what you want to do is to have the emerging theory. And you see the emerging theory is growing. But like a little tree, you could step on it and then completely crush it. So you want to protect that tree. And this is where shielding as a core concept was very important so that you can respond to the preoccupation of protecting the theory from preconception. When I was coding the data, I found that there was three main preconceptions in Glazer's writing. There was the mainstream thinking. So this is what the general population think about. There are preconceptions from the academia, for example, the supervisors, the colleagues, the reviewer, but also the existing theories. They're going to influence the way you think. Other things which are surprising, age could be seen as a preconception. Why do you think age has an impact on this if it's nowhere mentioned in your data? So maybe it was just a preconceived idea that you had that age could impact whatever research you're doing, while in fact, it's not anywhere in the data. And some other aspects are much more important than age, or not. Could be a good one, but then it has to be grounded in the data. Could be also from methods. One of the core issue of grounded theory, generally speaking, is that grounded theory emerged in different strands. You've got classic grounded theory, you've got constructive grounded theory, you've got Straussian grounded theory. And because of those emergence, some of those went into different way of analyzing the data that could create some preconception. And the last one, which was also surprising for me, is misapplying GT procedure. So for example, you do an interview and you mention your core category and boom, you just bias completely the interview instead of starting with an open ground question. Tell me about. We're talking here at the open coding stage. Later on, you don't mention core category, but you know they're going to talk about it. So the core category has been sufficiently saturated. You know the core category is there, so you can start with the core category. But at the beginning, you don't start with the core category. You don't know what it is. And if you start with the core category, you're going to influence the way people are going to talk. And maybe instead of talking about their main concern, they're going to talk about the preconceived core category that you had. Okay, so for all of those, there are some preconceptions that are coming from misapplying the grounded theory procedure. So you have to be very careful around that. Those preconceptions can also come, and this is new, did not exist in Glazer's time, from generative AI. And there are general threats of generative AI and some threats that are more specific to classic grounded theory. And we're going to talk about them. The presentation will last 30 minutes, just so you know. Those will threaten the emerging theory, and the emerging theory receive protection from shielding. So those are examples of shield that could protect your work from those different preconceptions. One of them is inner work. And it's something I practice with my brain, which is I'm going to suspend what I know. I'm going to suspend all the concepts that I know, all the theories that I know, and I'm just going to code the data for what the data are. So when I'm going to code the data, I'm going to name the pattern I see in the data, not based on existing theory, but based on what I see in the data, how I'm going to name what is in the data. So there is this kind of conceptual wall that exists between what you're coding and the existing theory, so that there is no pollution around that. And this is an inner work in the sense that it's you playing with your brain so that you create that conceptual wall in your brain. Other aspect, conceptual agility, the ability to very quickly conceptualize. You can also conduct an autoethnography to analyze what are your own preconceptions coming from working 20 years in a specific industry. You're full of preconceptions from there. So better being aware of those preconceptions so that when you're going to code the data, that's not going to code according to those preconceptions, and you want to code them with discernment. Kind shielding. I like this one. It emerged as an interesting shield where with kindness, with joy, enthusiasm, autonomy, with the creation of safe space to share the result, you can create and let your tree grow. It's kind of making sure that the space where your grounded theory is growing is protected, and it's protected in a very good, healthy environment. You can think of it this way if you want. And with good earth, good people around, enough water, and etc. So it's the joy, the enthusiasm, the autonomy is kind of what you need as well when you're growing your theory. And finally, the GT procedure. So there are a lot of GT procedures, as you can see, and those are very important when we work with them. So what is truly going on, increasing theoretical sensitivity, suspending knowledge, existing knowledge from literature, and so forth. Interchangeability of indicators, constant comparison process. Those are all the tools that help you keep the preconception away. They are the shield of the emerging theory. Going back to generative AI, how are we going to apply shielding to generative AI? So let's look at different threats that exist from generative AI. And those threats are kind of emerging right now, and we're discovering them as we use them. At the beginning, everybody was so crazy about AI that they didn't realize that AI was coming with many different problems, such as hallucination, and it still hallucinates. If you ask an AI how many are in a strawberry, they're going to answer, the AI can answer 2. You ask again, oh, sorry, I made a mistake, it's 1. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake, it's 3, and so forth. Inconsistencies, of course, if you ask a question several times, you're going to have several different answers. That could be a problem. A lack of understanding of the logic and the context. It happens to me a few times where I asked a question and then the context was not clear and it completely deleted all my data in my file because it misread something or I was not clear enough. So that context or lack of context is also very important. You've got biases as well. What is the sample size or the sample that you use and how many biases are in it? That's going to be reflected into the way the AI is going to generate the result. It's especially easy to spot when you ask an AI to generate an image for a specific type of job. You can try that and try with different AI. You see the results are pretty amazing. There are ethical and legal issues, plagiarism being one of them, copyright. What do you do with those issues? And other general threats, statistical bias, for example, and so forth. So some specific generative AI threat to classic grounded theory. I noticed 2 main threats. The first one is it could mirror the existing sources of preconceptions. In short, the AI is trained based on anything that the AI has been exposed to. So whatever preconception exists in the literature is going to bring that preconception there, and therefore could pollute the generated theory if you wanted to try to do one. The second preconception is coming from, and as I was mentioning earlier, there are different classic grounded theory procedures. Well, there are different procedures in grounded theory. Some are coming from Glaser, some are coming from Strauss, and so forth. But the process that you find in Glaser are kind of combined together and make a whole process completely coherent. As I mentioned earlier, you've seen it goes from step 1 to step 7, and they are all part of the same thing. But if you bring something like actual coding into it, where actual coding is not part of classic grounded theory, it's kind of unbalancing the way you're going to do a classic grounded theory. So you have to be extremely careful, and it's still the case right now. If I ask the AI to describe what is classic grounded theory, it's going to give me the wrong answer. I'm going to bring actual coding in it, where actual coding is not part of classic grounded theory or Glaserian grounded theory. And then if I ask to refine the question, then it's going to say exactly what it says with the R. Oh, I'm very sorry. I think I made a mistake, blah, blah, blah. So a few ideas and recommendation, maybe guidelines. Of course, they are subject to the evolution of the AI. Do not use generative AI to conceptualize without topic expertise. If you're not an expert in the field, you won't be able to track the hallucination. For classic grounded theory to be reliable, the full method of classic grounded theory must be applied. I think it's something that people are underestimating. And very often you will see, I use the tools of grounded theory, but if you use a full package, you should come to a very strong and robust theory. If you use some of the tools, you may miss something along the way. That's been my experience as well when I was working. Do not use generative AI as a source of data to analyze. I've seen that in a couple of theses, and that's really not a good idea because you don't have control on how the data have been created. So that could create some issues as well. It's a very lazy way of doing it. And Gen AI could be used as a shield protecting an emerging theory. And I think I see that in those two green area where you can let the generative AI help you. However, in the other area, that could be potentially dangerous. So I have three status for the shield. The shield can be raised, which means no generative AI should be used at this step. It's a no-no. It's just going to create some preconception. It's going to derail your theory. It's going to derail your way of thinking. It's going to influence your brain in a way that you really don't want because it's going to be very difficult to come back to the data. In orange, the shield is ready to be raised, and we use generative AI with caution. And finally, in green, there is no shield, and we can safely use generative AI. At the end of the day, 1 to 12, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 12, all the one on the top, the general idea for those is really to avoid having some preconceived idea coming from the generative AI. So if you do something with generative AI there, you're likely to get some preconception. If you do it after having the outcome emerge, so those are after the outcome emerge, then you start to become, or you have become an expert in your field. You have become an expert of what is the main concern in your data. You become an expert of what is the core category. You become an expert of what are the components of your theory. So if you have the right question, the right prompt of saying, what is the main concern in this data, providing that you have the authorization to use and furnish those data to an AI to analyze. There are ways to do it on a local place if needed. You could look at this from that perspective, but you're already an expert here. You're an expert of this one. You're an expert of this one. So you don't ask for the full theory at this place. No, that would be a big mistake. But you can ask, okay, what is the main concern that you find in those data? And then you can compare. But you have the expertise to be able to say, okay, no, you are hallucinating here. That's really bad. Or maybe it's going to give you some idea, and then you can reflect on it, go back to your data and say, oh yeah, maybe you're right on this one. I missed this step, or I missed this specific place, or I missed this specific concept, or I missed this specific relation. So this is coming very interesting there. So this is more of the explanation of the different steps and how and where we can use the AI. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it because we're reaching the end of the presentation. That's a problem with PowerPoint. Sometimes you change the color and the blue became orange, and I thought I fixed that, and I didn't. Please, Copilot, help me. Post-theory generation, finding verbatim in a text for illustration. That could be useful once you're done with your theory. You provide the text to the AI and say, okay, I have this concept. Can you find me some verbatim I need to use for the illustration? Some of them are like green, struggling with pattern numbing post-theory generation. I had the same experience. I had one term in my mind, and I asked Glazer during his seminar, and I asked Glazer for his opinion on the concept and the name of the concept, and he gave me another name in just 30 seconds, and I'm like, oh, shoot, that's really the name of my concept. Damn it, it's so smart. But yeah, all the experience. At the same time, if I had asked him, before doing the PhD, that would have been a possible preconception that could derail my own theory. So you have to be really careful when do you ask. And Glazer is very strong about it. Don't ask an expert about what is the main concern or the main concept of your data. They don't know. You know your data. Limitation, future research, and conclusion. Of course, ChatGPT. So you can create your own customized GPT, which is very interesting. So you can do a customized GPT for grounded theory. Uh, there is a limited amount of article, but it's growing super fast. At the Academy of Management in August, I was there, and it's like, I don't know, 70% of the session were talking about generative AI. So we're going there. It's pretty crazy. And it's all evolving extremely rapidly. That was 2 days ago when OpenAI released OpenAI o1 preview, where they're trying to get even more reflection and deep thinking into their model. Well, that's going to be very interesting to watch and try. Some future research, how could we evaluate the groundedness of generated concept and theories? That would be a very good prompt to try to get to. And the issue is there is a lack of replicability and inconsistency in the way ChatGPT is going to answer or any GenAI is going to answer. So that would be a really good research. I have no answer for that. Another research I'd love to do would be about the formal grounded theory based on the work of Glaser. So it's basically expanding, generalizing an existing substantive in the sense that it's localized to a specific set of data, for example, nurses, and then you expand it to entrepreneurs and the process is completely different from generating a classic grounded theory. It's generating a formal grounded theory. So there's a full process, and how can we apply GenAI for that? So in conclusion, in the last 10 seconds I have, ChatGPT, GenAI, that's an amazing tool. I dreamt of them as a student. I'm so happy I'm still alive. But you need the expertise to understand the result of a generative AI, which means your DBA matters a lot. Because if you don't have this expertise, you won't be able to interpret the AI result. Thank you very much. Any question, comment, you're very, very welcome. I hope your brain are still working.
All right. I have a question, if that's okay for you.
Oh, yeah, please.
You explained it very well, and it's a super interesting domain. I wasn't aware of it, so thank you very much for the clear explanation and for also warning us a bit. That's also behind your explanation and your presentation. Do you think, the question is, do you think, because now we see that generative AI can be used in some cases, but be very careful. Do you think that there is evolution in the future? Because it goes very fast. Do you think that some of the things that you said, we can't use it or be careful, that it can be improved, or that maybe in 6 months or a year you say, okay, now we can use generative AI in this part of the research? Do you see
It's
some evolution?
Yeah, it's going super fast. Just the announcement 2 days ago, I haven't had time to test it, but it's like, okay, they even created a more. So there are ways to improve it because you can create some testing into your prompt. So you can say generate this concept and then use this model, use those data and test if the concept fits. So you can really guide the AI to try to reduce the hallucination. I still think that in order to use the AI the best way possible, you need to be an expert in your field. Otherwise, it's very difficult to interact and to spot where the hallucinations are. In programming, and that's why I love to use it for programming, because it's going to give me ideas of algorithms that I would have never thought about. Maybe if I do a good deep Google search, I will find them, but not in the 10 seconds that it takes for the AI to write the script. And I'm teaching people who are not programmer or coder, and they love it. They love it. Now, what we do is we don't teach them to program, we teach them to understand the code. Because they
Mm-hmm.
don't need to know the syntax. The syntax is already there, but they need
Yeah.
to be able to read it and understand what the code is doing so that they can give an okay for the code to run. So we divided by 3, and I think there are some studies on productivity. And I think that was the ratio for junior programmers in terms of productivity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For
Okay.
conceptualization, which is the part that interests us, I think if you don't have the expertise in your data, you won't be able to assess the result and also to understand the theories that is generated. So I think it's a no-no of thinking, oh, you're going to give me this theory that will be valid. No, you need to assess that theory.
Yeah.
Now, maybe in 2 years or in 6 months, they will be able to give us a theory with so little hallucination that you start to trust it a lot. That I think will happen. I still my brain is still like, okay, can I trust up to which extent? And how useful is it for me to understand the situation? Because at the end of the day, we do that to have an impact. Our thesis is here to give us a conceptual model, framework, so that we understand the situation and find a solution to it.
Okay, thank you. I
Okay.
have a second question. It maybe it's not in the core of your presentation. I'm a business psychologist, and you were talking about preconceptions. I'm very interested in that part also, because it's very important. Do you know that there is some research on conscious preconceptions and unconscious preconceptions? Because I can imagine that, yeah, you're very aware, and you can be very conscious about I have to do this and not to do that, etc. But I think based on our culture, on our education, there are a lot of preconceptions that are unconscious, and we are not realizing that it is a preconception. I know it's a bit out of the core of this presentation, but it's
No,
just
it
because
is.
it's interesting for me.
Yeah. Let me share my screen very quickly if I can. I present it, but let me see what that's right here. The inner work that we have here is really what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah.
And especially the conducting an autoethnography is one way you can decrease the preconception. That's not the only way. Of course, you can have some external feedback from other people on your inner preconception and so forth. I would go even further than that, but then it's outside of an academic research. But some people have access to very interesting intuition and very interesting knowledge in the global consciousness of the world. And through that global consciousness, we can bring some very interesting insight in our own research and also in our own preconceptions and biases. And I've experienced that directly. That's not the classic academic way of doing research because we're training our brain to be analytical. But if we connect to our intuition, we bring more and more of this unconscious down. And now the big question, and this is one of the presentations I've done at the Academy of Management 2024, 3 months ago, about what is knowledge and where is this knowledge? Can we access it? What is knowable, unknowable, unknown, known? So you've got in the model, I didn't develop that part, but we developed the part around intuition. And we asked nurses. And nurses are a very interesting population because they will be very connected to their intuition and feeling. And when they enter in a room, they can connect to themselves and be aware of their own intuition and also be aware of what the people in front of their patient and the context is sending them. And then by matching those, trying to see what's going on, plus as they connect more and more to their intuition, they can even bring more information to match with the context. So there are fascinating exploration around that. The paper is in free access on the Academy of Management website if you're interested.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Wow. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Super.
I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. I think it was about 6 months ago or something that I think it was Professor Moscarola who also gave a webinar on the use of generative AI. And I'm relatively new to the use of ChatGPT. So at this point, I said, well, it feels a bit like cheating using generative AI. And he really said, no, it's just another tool. And think back because like 10 years ago, you had to go to the library and now you use Google Scholar, for example. It's making use of the technology. But yeah, you have to be aware about the responsible use of the generative AI. And I think your presentation really highlighted, okay, in this area, yes, you can use it. This area, be careful and don't trust too much on generative AI. So yeah, for me also, it's a very learning experience because I'm about to start the process of gathering data through interviews, etc. So yeah, this really came at the right time also for me to know, okay, how can I use generative AI as a tool in my research in the next couple of months. Yeah, so thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, and the key aspect is, am I an expert enough to
Mm-hmm.
detect the hallucinations of
Exactly.
the AI?
Yeah.
Because if you're not expert enough, the jury of your DBA will be expert enough
Yeah.
to detect that you don't know enough. So,
It's
and
clear.
I
Yeah.
see, yeah, that's why in some way it's like the internet. You can copy page Wikipedia and put it in your thesis. That would
Mm-hmm.
be plagiarism. You can
Yeah.
ask ChatGPT to write your thesis. That would be plagiarism as well.
Mm.
But if you master your data, you got done the work, you got your concept, and now you're looking for better concepts using generative AI, then it starts to be interesting because you can access this augmented super intelligence, which is also extremely dumb from time to time.
Yeah. True.
I think that's
Yeah.
that's where I am right now. But
Okay.
for editing some text, if you're not a native English, for there are many use of it which are
Mm-hmm.
really speeding up our own, like just recording and having the AI to go through and transcribing is amazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because yeah, before it was a very long process. Now it's super fast. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. And don't forget to start your interviews with an open question.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm already have the what do you call it? The questions predefined, reviewed. So I start with the open question, indeed,
Yes, please.
and yeah, and based on literature review, I have some attention points. Hey, it could be this, could be that, but yeah, I start with the open question, but then basically to confirm, verify. Okay, maybe you forgot something, and you
Mhm.
can well use the other areas of interest. So yeah,
Or maybe people don't care about the rest of the question because they want to talk about something else, which
it
is
can
really
be.
what is
Yeah,
what they are
that's good
concerned
too.
about.
Yeah. But if the interview starts or stops after 1 minute, and then you can well feed some
Agree.
other topic. Yeah. Okay.
Generally
Yeah.
speaking, in granted series, the grantor question, which we use in open coding, uh, we use only that question.
Mm.
And then the interview guide will start to be more structured as we do the selective coding because we know what is the main concern, we know what is the core category, and then we can dig into this. But it's a
Okay.
different approach. Your approach is doing the literature review first to identify some model, some
Mhm.
concept that you want to dig into. So it's a different approach. So
Yeah.
there are really two different ways of doing qualitative research. One is more like the inductive, where you don't know and you start from your data. The other one is more deductive, where you
Yeah.
start from the model and you want to improve or find more information about this model.
True. Yeah.
So don't. I just want to clarify because sometimes, especially if it's your first time doing research, we can get mixed up into the different approaches. And both are fine. It's just they are taking different approaches, which will generate different results as well.
Yeah, it was more to at least have an idea of the possible concepts. I mean, I'm working in the field for a couple of years now, so I already have some concept about
Yeah.
what the relevant area of interest are. And I start with of course, with the open questions, but also knowing from my own experience and also some initial literature review to see, okay, yeah, the concept that I have in mind, what research is available. I'm not starting really greenfield,
Yeah.
but the idea is okay to from out of the data come with the theoretical model. Yeah. But I'm not really green about,
No,
about 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 the topic. Yeah.
and that's one of the beauty of doing a DBA because you're coming with so much years of experience that
Yeah.
you can capitalize on that to do a research, and you already have a lot of data you can
Mhm.
analyze.
Yeah.
And the autoethnography at this stage is also very interesting because it can first you have your own data, you analyze your own data, and then based on that you can identify what are your preconceptions and what you
Mhm.
think the reality is. I had a big one. I thought that people will have one big epiphany before quitting their job and starting a business. Not at all. They go through many different epiphanies, and after every epiphany, they find a good reason not to do it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have get that. For me, it was like one big moment and then they're done. No. It's a lot of big moments and they don't go.
Yeah.
That was my preconceptions. Anyway,
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming,
Thank you.
and your
Yeah.
questions. I hope it helps.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely. It was very, very interesting. Thank you for your time, for the very clear explanation. So thanks so much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah. Have a nice weekend.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.